How top dealers are increasing profits in their parts department. It's not necessarily going to be about straight how can you increase your profit margin, but it's also going to be looking at what things you can do to reduce your losses, what other efficiencies you can bring in, what you can measure, and look at how you measure those sorts of things. Just a little bit of background on myself. Been involved in the automotive industry all my life. Started off as a technician, which probably gets me shot in this room, but it's a whole other thing. Worked through in the dealerships, saw the light and jumped over to parts. Then I got into the DMS side of the world and started working with one of our opposition for 6 years, and then came over to Pentana Solutions, where I've been for the last 11 years and 16 days. Not that I'm counting. Spent a lot of time in a lot of different dealerships. In actual fact, this is very, very uncomfortable for me. This is not where I'm at. I don't usually have the jacket, or the tie. And from that end, I might just get a little bit more comfortable because it's not where I am. And if anybody's seen me kicking around their dealerships, they've probably seen me more like this kicking around their dealerships. I'm out the back, I get in there, I get dirty, and let's talk to the guys on the floor and understand what's going on in your dealerships. Been in dealerships from right across Australia, from the high parts volume guys through to the aftermarket guys that are doing the off-road accessories sort of things, from 4 users through to warehouses running 60 or 70 staff out there picking parts. So seen a bit of variety, and I'm going to pull a few of those different things together today to put them together and see what we can do for your dealerships out there. So a bit of what I'm going to cover off today. Where I'm going to start is getting the inventory levels right within your dealership, getting the right mix of the stock on the shelves. How do you do that? Getting the right stuff so you can sell it. Because if you haven't got the right stuff, you can't sell the right stuff. And making sure that we measure what we've got. What are those inventory levels? Measure them, understand what's out there, what should we be doing with it, what advantages can we take to get rid of some of that not so good inventory, and what are we doing with our right inventory. I'm going to look at capturing some lost opportunities. So what aren't we selling? What should we have? What should be on the shelf, and what can we get rid of? Then a little bit of a look at margins. As I said, it's not all about margins, but have a looking at some margins and different ways we can understand those margins, look at those margins and what we can do about those margins, and what can we do about getting rid of some of the parts that we aren't making the money out of, and how we can pull other parts in. And then finally, we'll finish off with some efficiencies. So talk about some different efficiencies within the warehouse, and we're going to finish it off with something that's very close to my heart. We're going to talk about barcode scanning at the very end of it, if we get enough time. But, I'm sure I'll make time for that. So just where are we going to start? We're going to start about ordering. And as it says at the top, getting a handle on your inventory levels. So making sure you've got the right inventory levels and ordering the right stock, and how you're doing that ordering. There's really two main ways of ordering the stock. It's using the self or the dealer-directed ordering, where you're doing it yourself using either a piece control or a movement code control ordering, or there's the manufacturer-directed reorders out there now. Still finding a lot of dealers out there are still handling it via piece control or the older style, traditional methods of doing their orders rather than moving over to movement codes. I know there's a lot of guys in here that are using movement codes, have seen the light and moved forward. But some of the challenges that we see with the guys that are running the piece control, it worked years ago when you had a single franchise and the car park was fairly small, and the makes and models, and an AFL1 fitted half the models out there. It was pretty easy. You didn't need that intimate knowledge with your parts. But now the car park's got a lot bigger. Your dealerships are handling 5 or 6 franchises in your warehouses. As I said, we've got guys that have got 14 or 15 franchises in the one warehouse. So having that intimate knowledge of all those parts and understanding what you should be stocking is very, very difficult. And using piece control, you need to keep a real constant focus on it. And no one has the ability to do that and has the time. You looked at the guys that used to do that and could spend the time on it. They did a very good job. But it required a lot of manual intervention and a lot of focus on it. And you'd see that someone would go away for 3 or 4 weeks. Those people had been around for a long time. They had long service leave, and everything could fall in a hole. So their mix of stock on the shelf ended up being really wrong, and they were missing out on a lot of opportunities in saving money in doing their stock orders. We were finding that their stock order ratios were very low. I was finding dealers out there that had stock order ratios less than 50% because they were trying to do piece control and trying to get a hold of it. Moving them over to movement codes, we were able to increase that rapidly. And depending on what franchises you're with, that can mean massive rebates and massive discounts. So moving over to movement codes allows the system to do the work for you. Gets it involved, gets it taking control of it. automatically running updates, remeasuring the parts every time you run a stock order, reassessing them, fitting them into the right bucket. The great thing about movement codes, it gives us a ability to be variable by make, so we can set up different parameters for different makes. Several of our manufacturers, Toyota, Mazda, Subaru, Isuzu truck, are all moving over to daily stock orders. GM, forget the biggest one, or second biggest one, all moving over to daily stock orders. Doing that with piece control became very difficult to get the right stocking levels on a daily stock order basis, whereas a movement codes allows you to set those parameters to really crunch that stock down on those fast-moving items and only carry 2 weeks' worth of fast-moving stock. And then being able to take the other end out and carrying 8 weeks' worth of stock of the slower-moving parts. It also allows you to break it up by price. So with movement codes, trying to break it up by price and then saying, rightio, I've got something that's really, really cheap, some plug washers or clips, let's carry extra stock of those. So I'm not handling that all day, every day. And again, you're gaining efficiencies within your warehouse to streamline the whole process there. So if we can get some efficiencies in there, take advantage of stock order discounts, stock order rebates, we're going to increase your bottom line because you're going to be buying smarter. And it also means that if you've got the right stock on the shelf, you're going to have the efficiencies because you're not going to be doing the cross-stocking side of things. But a lot of our manufacturers now are giving the dealers the option of manufactured directed reorders. So with, we have RIM, which is the GM version, or ASR that Porsche and Volvo truck and Mack truck use. There's Parts Eye coming around the corner, which a few manufacturers are looking at and picking up. Again, all different ways of the manufacturer doing their directed reorder. That's where they take the reorder process out of the dealership. The dealership's no longer having to go through and analyse what their stock they're selling. The manufacturer is analysing what you're doing and then pushing the stock down there. They're looking at trends. They know what model's coming out. So they're taking control of that side of things for you. It frees up some time in the dealership because you're not needing that knowledge that you had before, especially when you're handling lots of franchises. And with that becomes some incentives the manufacturers put behind it. Things like, guaranteed buybacks. You get something sent to you on a manufactured directory order, they'll guarantee they'll buy it back. With GM, they actually automatically send you a report and say, this is all the parts that we sent to you 3 months ago that you haven't sold. How about you send it back to us? And the reason they're doing that is because they're reducing their stock holding. They're analysing what's out in the dealers, pulling back the stock that they need so they can ship it out to a different market. Something that was selling in Melbourne now might be selling in Brisbane. So let's get it out of the dealers in Melbourne and move it up into Brisbane instead of just bringing more stock into the country and flooding the country with more stock. So taking advantage of those sorts of things. They do include buybacks in it, and a lot of them will have purchase programs as well, where they'll look at where they're trying to chase their targets. They'll offer some discounts. They know what you've got. They know what you're selling, so they might offer you some extra incentives to push some extra parts in. So it's all about getting the right stock on the shelf, so you're buying it at the right price, and increasing your chances for getting margins. But once we've got the right stock on it, we need to assess what we've got and look at what we've got and understand some of the stock that's not selling on the shelf. At the end of the day, your dealership's going to be set an inventory level you can carry. It might be, depending where you are, it could be 50,000, could be 100,000, it could be a couple of $1 million. But the boss is going to say that's all the inventory you can carry. And if you've got your shelves full of rubbish, crap, obsolete stock, excess stock, you're not going to be able to go out and buy the good stock that you can sell. So reducing down that aged and excess stock and getting rid of that so you can start putting the good stock on is the way to go. So you need to not only be looking at ordering the right stuff, but how do you get rid of the old stuff? So you need to be using the tools within your product. Within ERA, you're looking at your age stock report, your 2221 report, or your excess stock report, 2257, looking at those and analysing it. Once you've got your movement codes working for you and recommending the right levels, it's also going to give you the ability to analyse what the excess stock is and look at whether you can get rid of some of that stock off the shelf and move those. That's going to free up some dollars to start investing in those parts that aren't selling as often, but you can take advantage of the stock orders on. And then once you've assessed that, if it's crap and it's just no good, look at the ability to write the stock down. So, take the write-back functions within. Within ERA, we have the write-back function, the 2011 write-back function, where your ability to write down the cost of the parts. We're all getting buybacks from our manufacturers. We're getting POPs or whatever they call it. Most of your dealers out there would be accruing for obsolescence. So taking advantage of some of that accrual and getting rid of some of those parts, writing them back so you can start offering some discounts. Take advantage of that, offer the discount out to the customers and move some of that old stock. Or just write the stock off altogether, get it off the shelf, consolidate your current stock and bring it further forward in your warehouse so you can get some efficiencies in picking. At the moment, if you're walking past dead stock every day to go and pick the good stuff, Why not? Let's analyse that, get it out of the place, and start putting the good stuff where we need to have it. Another side of it is measuring your lost sales. So what aren't you selling? So many dealers out there are not capturing that opportunity. Got an example up here of some lost sales. You know, we're looking at we're in March now, so we're looking at March. We're looking at the first 7 months of this year. So this part, we've had 2 hits on it this month. So from our point of view, we're not going to stock that part. We haven't had enough hits. We haven't sold 3 in 6 months, or depending on where your parameters are set up. So we're going to look at that part, and we're going to say, right, it's not going to come up. The system's not automatically going to recommend that. It's not going to look at it for stock order. You're going to have no idea that part's been selling out there. You've been buying that on daily, and you're probably missing out on the opportunity of a 10, 15% stock order discount. You know, some of them can even be up as high as 20% stock order discount. Or if you're a Toyota dealer, you could be looking at your margin or your rebates, missing out on those. So if I don't sell it again till June, the system's not going to actually bring it up and recommend it free order till I get to July. So I'm not going to even see that and get an idea of that. But if I was actually to track some lost sales on that part and actually track that and record it within the system, get my guys logging lost sales, using the lost sale code set up in 2575 to actually record that we've got some lost sales on that. So we can see that we had a lost sale in January. Didn't get it, didn't sell it. Missed a go out in February because we didn't have it. But then we got 2 hits in March. The system's now going to prompt you to bring that in for a stock order. So it's going to come up on the reorder report. Let's have a look at that in April. Right? You might think about it and go, yeah, well, really, I don't want to gamble on that as yet because I've only really sold 2. I could have sold 4. Then again, you get another lost sale in April. You think, well, I might actually take a punt on that and go and throw one on the shelf, which would then give you the opportunity to actually get the sale in May that you actually missed out on because the customer's gone elsewhere. Or even if you didn't get the sale in May, you went through and you took it in June, you've taken it in June and then you've pulled it off the stock. So if you've pulled it off the shelf, you've got the advantage of the stock order discount. So you've saved yourself some money there, or you've bought it smarter. You've also then got the efficiencies because you haven't gone through the cross-stock process. Order it, put it in the order bucket, someone place the stock order or place the order, bring it in, receipt it, transfer it across, cross-stock it and get it out. Much, much quicker to put it away part of the recommended or major reorder and then just go and pick it from the shelf. You're going to be a lot more efficient in getting your parts off the shelf. So again, reducing time, freeing up your warehouse staff to get it going. So just being able to capture the data. We automatically highlight and we can include a percentage of lost sales in your stock order recalculation. A lot of the smart dealers, instead of using the standard lost sales report, they'll actually build a report out of Report Pider and they'll have multiple lost sale codes. So lost on price, lost on availability, various different lost sale codes, getting the guys to put comments in behind those lost sales. So when you're then going and reviewing the lost sales, understanding why you actually lost it instead of just the fact that I didn't sell one. So going and analysing that. But that relies on having set up the lost sale codes. Looking at some measurements of inventory. So starting to measure inventory and look at your measurements of inventory. So a couple of different ways. We'll talk about a few different things for measuring inventory now. But the first one I'm going to look at is your turn ratios or your turn rates. How often are you turning your stock over? So it's looking at, I've got an investment in inventory, I've got $100,000 in inventory. How often am I actually using that inventory and refreshing that inventory? So what sales am I making out of my inventory? So there's 2 types of turns. There's a basic turn and a true turns. Basic turn, also referred to as gross turns, somewhere along the line. And it's looking at your total cost of sales. So what was my total cost of sales for the given period? And let's say we look at it over a month. So not what your actual sales revenue was, but what was the cost of those sales or the cost of the parts sitting on the shelf. And then dividing it by your average inventory. So the value of your average inventory on your shelf. So if you're talking about over a month period, what was my opening inventory plus my ending inventory? Divide it by 2, it's going to give you your monthly average inventory. And then divide that into your total cost of sales. And it'll give you an idea of how often you're turning your stock. If you're on daily stock orders, you're probably looking at turning your stock over 6 times in a year. So being able to use that inventory, turn it over six times in the year, reinvesting that inventory. So if you're investing $100,000, being able to turn that over. If you're on weekly stock orders, you're not going to get the hit rate because you're not going to carry the amount of stock. You're probably looking at somewhere around the 4 mark. Now those figures are available on the bottom of your monthly analysis. So ERA does all that work for you. So on the monthly analysis report, the 2213 report, at the end of the month, I think it's nearly the very last line on it, you'll see your turns there. And looking at those and understanding those, and then looking at what we can do about that. And these are going to improve as you get your inventory mix right. So if you're doing the right thing up the front with your reordering, and you've got your movement codes working for you and doing the right thing, your turns are going to improve for you. The other side of it, 2 higher turns, well, in a basic turn, is probably going to mean that you're doing a lot of cross-stocking, a lot of daily purchasing. So you bring in a high volume of stock in daily. You're not picking from yourselves, so you're losing a lot of efficiencies within your warehouse. Probably good because you're keeping your inventory valuation low, which is going to keep some people in the business happy. But it means you're going to be missing out on the opportunities of stock order ratios, buybacks, stock order discounts, those sorts of things. The true turns is the same basic calculation, but it's the cost of sale from stocked lines. So it's looking at what we actually sold from the shelf, so the stock that we physically had on the shelf, to what the average inventory valuation. So it's taking that whole daily or emergency order out of the equation. So it's really analysing what you're doing. If this is poor, it's really going to analyse the fact that you've got a lot of dead stock sitting on the shelf, and you're not turning that stock over. Now, there will always be cases where you've done special buys and things like that, where you've increased your stock and you don't have that ability. But over a period of time, that should wash out. For your true turns, you're not going to get as good figures. Probably for a daily dealership, you're probably looking at more like 5 turns in a year, because you're just pulling the stuff out of the stock. For the weekly, you're probably just sneaking just under 4, 3.5, 4 true turns in the year. But it's more of a realistic analysis of what you're doing with your current stock. And it's going to be a total reflective, as I said, of what you're doing with your ordering side of things, and your dead stock, and once you've got rid of your dead stock. Continuing on with the theme of measuring things, we're going to talk about measuring of your fill rates. So service fill or stock fill, and total fill or line fill, some people refer to it as line fill. So it's the fill ratios. In ERA we have a report called the First Pick Service Level Report, 2554 report. And I'll actually show you a shot of that on the next screen, but just a little bit of an understanding of what it's trying to analyse. In this example here, we've got a customer. He's rung up and he's ordered 10 parts. So the customer says, hey, I want these 10 parts. Of those, you normally stock 7 of those parts. So you normally have 7 sitting out on the shelf. But today, because of a stock outage, a bit of a rush on the batteries yesterday, we now are only actually able to supply 6 of those lines straight up. So looking at that total fill, we're looking at the number of lines ordered, so the 10 lines ordered, versus the number of lines we actually supplied. So we were actually only able to supply 6 out of those 10 lines. So we've only really got a 60% fill ratio as a first pick run. Okay, doesn't take into consideration what we're doing down the track and what we're doing with emergency orders. Our report does show you that. But up front, you've had to go out, and 4 out of those lines you've had to go out and run around silly to try and get them. You haven't met the customer's needs straight away. And if that's the service department, you've probably just crucified the service department. And they'll tell you about it. Let me tell you, they'll tell you. So it means that you've left a car sitting on the hoist. They've had to box it back up, get it out, put the guy in a rental car, do whatever to keep it going. So it's costing the dealership other parts of the dealership. It's also cost you money because you haven't been able to take advantage of your buying programs on it. Your service fill side of things is looking at your ability to supply the lines out of what you would normally carry. So in this case, I've supplied 6 out of the 7 lines that I normally carry. Okay, there's always going to be a case where you don't have any. Now that service fill, really you want to be looking at a nice high ratio on that. If you should be carrying it, why haven't you got it on the shelf? Yeah, okay, you're on weekly stock orders. It was the last day before the stock order arrived. I did miss out on it. Okay, let's understand that. Accept it. Maybe I should be increasing my stock order parameters to get a couple more on there, get a bit more coverage. Or was it a one-off sort of thing that's just gone? But understanding and looking at those sorts of things. So just a little shot of the report. Now in this report I've run it in summary fashion. You can actually run it in summary or in detail. So you'll notice across the top we've got a lot of blank columns. We've got the part number, the description, and the source, the ROP and the BSL. If we were to run it into detail, we would actually see every individual part number and the detail on every individual part. So where we've lost individual parts. So once you actually get to analyse what you've got here and break down where your problems are, is then to be able to come back and actually drill into those individual makes and understand the individual sale types and work out where I've gone wrong and where I should be fixing it up. So we've shown down here, we break it up by make at the top, so you can see your different brands that you're running. You can run it for all makes, or you can run it for individual makes. You can select multiple makes. In this situation, I think this dealership has probably about 7 or 8 makes. I've just selected 3 out of their makes, just to pick a couple out of it. We break it up by parts, invoices, and repair orders. So again, when I run my selection criteria, I can select either one or the other, or both in this situation. And then I can do it by sale type. So looking at the breakdown of how you're selling it in your parts department and analysing those different. And obviously things like RO customer, where I'm looking at my ROC, I'm going to want to have a really nice high first pick, because I want to be able to get that stock straight out of the shelf, the techs come up and want the part. If it's a service fill item, something that I should be carrying, I need to be able to getting up to the high 90% and things like that, because I need to be meeting those customers' needs. So a little bit of detail, I've just focused up on that top section there. I didn't know whether you could see it out there. So it's counting the number of lines ordered versus the number of lines supplied. And then it's showing the number of allocation. So where we're looking at, we've ordered 69 for the customer. We've actually ended up meeting every one of those customer needs, so we didn't end up with any lost sales out of the process. But 22 of those parts we didn't physically have on the shelf. So we had to order them in from somewhere else, pay a penalty to get those in, and then run around silly to get them back out the door. And if we're talking about the workshop, it means that we've crunched the workshop and slowed the workshop down, not being able to meet their needs. A lot of your manufacturers have got the fix right first time processes now, so this is going to be something that's going to really affect that fix right first time. We then show it off as a couple of percentages. So your percentage of your first pick, so what was I picking at? On that top line, 68%, pretty poor, but then 100% fill. So we ended up supplying everything to the customer, but 32% of the parts we didn't have on the shelf right up the front. You can see on the second one there, we've got a 98% fill ratio, first fill. Going to keep our workshop pretty happy out there with that sort of ratio. There wasn't too much that they wanted that we didn't have. And that reflects down the bottom there. You can see where these guys are doing it pretty good down the bottom there, the 97, 99. You're not always going to get 100%. Those couple of examples I showed at the top are obviously very small volumes compared to what we're really doing. But it's going to be very difficult to get 100% because you're going to be running this for a period. You'll run it over a month from the 1st to the 28th of February, run it over the month. There'll be jobs that didn't get finished on the last day of the month that didn't get filled to the start of the next month. So they will fall out of the margin. But analysing those, looking at it and say, well, look, I've got a real problem down the bottom here on my trade mechanical. I can see that down there I'm only getting a 63% first fill ratio down on the second line from the bottom. I could then go in and I could run the report just for the trade mechanical, have a look at those and actually look at the part detail on those and understand what parts I'm missing out on that and seeing if I'm missing the same part several times over. Should I maybe be throwing one on the shelf? Are my ordering parameters incorrect? What's the ROP and BSL in the system? And analyse that and bring it back and start trying to work that back into the system and drilling down on that detail. But again, getting the right mix and then measuring what you're doing and understanding that side of things. It will be very different for different types of sales. So your RO warranty, you're never going to expect it to be great because there's just going to be weird stuff that comes in. There's going to be the one-off engine control unit or the door handle that the kid decided to snap and those sorts of things. And things like trade mechanical. Trade mechanical is probably somewhere where you've got a fair bit of margin in it. There's a fair bit of margin out there in the mechanical side of things. So maybe you want to be trying to get that up so you become the mechanical shop's preferred supplier. So they come to you first so you're getting the margin. The trade side of things, the first pick's probably not as, the crash repairers, probably not as important because you've usually got some pretty big lead times on that side of things and there's probably not a lot of margin in it anyway. So looking at the different sides and analysing it and where it fits for your business and what you're trying to chase, the business side of things that you're trying to chase down. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about what can you do about selling some of your stuff. We analysed before about what we've got as some aged stock and what we've got as some excess stock. And we understand now that we've got a bunch of parts out there that are getting a little bit old and we're not selling. And then with our first pick report, we actually stumbled across the fact that our mechanical trade, there's a lot of margin in our mechanical trade and we're not doing that quite as well. So maybe because we've got that margin there, we should maybe take advantage of that and start advertising those sorts of things out. The smart dealers out there doing document specials. most of you would be running one of our printing solutions, something like a DocuSmart or a Wilcom printing solution. They have the ability for producing specials on the back. So producing your parts invoice and on the back side of it putting some specials and advertising some specials on the back. You can do the same thing with your service invoice. So looking if it's a service invoice, let's advertise on the back of it, advertise some accessories, advertise some merchandise. If you're a Ford dealer out there, you're on a bit of a roll. I don't know how, winning some races. So advertise that on the back. Get the customers out there, get them passionate. Get them buying the jackets and the race gear. Put it on the back of the service invoices and get out to it. With that document specials, we can tailor it back to by sale type. So we look at your sale types that we're talking about and break it up. If you're selling to a mechanical customer, advertise